For today's show, I am excited to have Erik Fagerstrom on. Erik is from GreatWater 360. I've had numerous really good conversations with him. He's a very smart person, and it should be a lot of fun. How are you today, Erik?
I'm well. Thank you for asking. I don't I appreciate you saying smart person. I think that our conversations have gone down rabbit holes. That's very nice of you to say. But I'm well. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. I think I'm probably the reason for the rabbit holes and my kind of squirrel mentality of kind of just being all over the place all the time. But you're always easy to talk to. This will be really, I think, a great conversation in a lot of different regards. I think one of the cool parts that I really enjoy about when I talk to you is that you've been able to see a lot of different shops over the course of your career. I think probably the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between, all kinds of different people in the industry. And anytime you can talk to somebody that has that kind of experience and has seen more than just one shop, right? Like you've seen a lot of shops. I think you start to understand what works, maybe what doesn't work, and why it doesn't work, and that'll be a big part of our conversation today. So excited about that. Now, I'll start off with you, similar to how I start off the show with other guests, in that I want to learn more about you, what makes you tick, kind of what got you into the industry in the first place. But let's start with what your role is at GreatWater 360. What's your job?
So currently, I'm the director of training and talent development with GreatWater 360. So, building content, facilitating training classes, making arrangements for classes for our technicians so that they can grow their career. Kind of uh, jack of all for right now. I am the extent of the training department, so that's been a fun adventure for me. But yeah, it's been great.
GreatWater 360 is, for those of you that aren't familiar, a huge network of shops. How many shops do you guys have?
I think we're just at 140 right now.
Yeah. So you doing the training for roughly 140 stores, that is no small undertaking. That is a lot of people. That is a lot of stores. Uh, that's a lot of everything going on. And it sounds like you're kind of creating this thing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's, I mean, certainly you can't tell from the camera, but the hair loss has really just been, sped up very fast recently. And that's, when I signed up for the job, I kind of expected it would be that way. But it's the opportunity is there's a ton of great people in our industry and in our company that I've met over my career. So it's not, I say it's on me, but it's also, I've got a great network of people that I can talk to and share, ideas. So it's been a challenge, but it's also been a ton of fun. It's just a great ride.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but how did they come up with the name GreatWater 360? It's a very unique name. And I've always wondered that. I've never asked anybody, but it is one that does stand out because it is different.
Sure. So as we've grown, we're partnering with shops all over the Midwest, and we're really trying to capitalize on the local shops and the partnerships that they have with their communities, and so we're wanting to continue to use that history, that legacy that's been existing, but also pay homage to the Great Lakes, which is what's all around us. So that's where GreatWater 360 came from. Is just recognizing that because we're in Michigan and Indiana and Illinois and Ohio, the Great Lakes are right there with us, and it's part of who we are.
Very cool. I'd love to hear that. Now, how about you? And how did you get started in this crazy world of automotive?
Like many others, I probably started out the similar with, working with family members, going to get the wrench that they wanted to use when they were underneath the car. Um, and then working my way, into it. I remember buying my first car when I was 14, way too young to be able to drive it. Bought it from a buy here, pay here joint, and the seller was nice enough to say, "I'm going to put some gas in for you." Well, he put gas in it because the tank actually had a leak. It was the only way I could drive it off the lot. So very, very early on, I had to learn how to change a gas tank out. And that was a fun experience. Had the opportunity to work with going back a ways, work with Western Auto, as in one of their shops, and then had the opportunity to join Bridgestone Retail Operations and work for them in a few different states and a bunch of different roles. And then a few years ago, got connected with some really wonderful people here at GreatWater, and that's kind of where I ended up.
How did you kind of make that transition to where you are now? Because it can be a bit of a challenge, right? If you're more uh, accustomed to being in the shop, or like if you're comfortable, working in a bay and then going into a job where you're not doing that anymore, I have to imagine that helps you with everything that you're doing right now, obviously. But how was that transition?
So the transition's still happening. I stepped into the role in January, and it's been entertaining in a couple ways because I am a field guy at heart, right? Working in a shop, working in a bay, running a shop, running a district, even running a region. I'm used to that. And so one of the early on questions that I had asked, stepping into the role was, how am I going to be measured? As a shop leader, and when I was a district manager, I had a P&L, and I was measured by, how I did towards the targets. How am I being measured in a training role? The answers were a little vague, right? But it was by design. I've gotten a great deal of support. It's funny that you mentioned that. I was in a training class early this week, and a few of the service advisors there. We talked about how they transitioned from being a technician to being a service advisor, and that's a challenge that a lot of people have, right? And it was, how did you make that step? Well, the first thing I had to do was take the toolbox home, right? Because if I've got that there, that's a crutch that I'm going to continue to. We're getting busy, and I can help us catch up, right? So just for myself, it's been learning, right? I have a wonderful support network, and regularly checking in with, hey, this is what I'm working on, this is where my progress is, and I feed off of that feedback. Good, bad, and different. I want to know where it's at, and that's been the biggest thing. Like transitioning away from having all the numbers dictate my performance to now being able to look at the soft skill feedback on the results of the training that I'm presenting, doing some surveys, being able to look at, there is certainly some data, right? I can look and see, year over year, how we compared on how many technicians are involved in our training. There's some of that stuff, but it definitely was a cultural shift for me in my head with what I was used to. I was used to starting work at 5 a.m. and get into a shop as early as possible. And it's just a little bit different as far as that goes. Not to say that I don't get up at 5 a.m. and still start working, but it's changing the deliverables.
I do really like the fact that during the interview process, you asked, what am I being judged on? And I think that's really good advice, regardless of what position you're applying for, that really anybody should ask, right? Because I think it helps clarify understanding, it helps clean stuff up from the start. And at times, there may be experiences like you had where maybe there wasn't a direct answer for it. And I think it's okay for an employee to push a company on that a little bit, right? To say, okay, what am I being judged on? And if they don't really have a clean answer, maybe follow that up with, you know what, I would like some KPIs or some metrics to be able to be judged on, because if I don't know what I'm aiming for, or really what's going to make you happy, it's going to be hard to hit that target, right? And so the fact that you had the wherewithal to ask that question, I think is really, really great. And I would encourage anybody listening to ask that exact same question, because I think it's hugely important.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I was in a wrenching role. A lot of it's been in the sales role, either as a shop manager, as a district manager, anything like that. But over the years, for anybody who's been in a meeting, been in a training class with me, they would say one of the common mantras that I talk about is how our salary, whether that be hourly or salary or whatever, that gets us to the door, right? I want to know, like, what does sweating deliver for me, right? And so they hear me say, like, our salary gets us to the door, and the bonus is why we sweat. Our salary gets to the door, and that end result is why we sweat. We're not just coming in and punching a clock. That's not the role that we have in our industry. Our jobs in our industry is very challenging, and we've having a good understanding as far as where the demands are and what we're expected to do, and how we thrive in that role. I think that that's very, being able to understand, like, really truly what does success look like, gives people an opportunity to know, like, what the limit is for them, or where they can achieve the next level at.
On the other side of that, from a leadership standpoint, this is something that if you're sitting in that leadership chair, that manager's chair, that is something that you really have to focus on, is being able to clarify expectations, to set a vision, not only for your company but for that individual as well. I think a lot of times, if you don't give especially technicians that visibility to what their career path might look like, it can feel like you're just working in a corner that you're never going to get out of, right? And even if that individual wants to stay a technician over the course of their career, they probably still want to know what training looks like. They still want to know what is going to move them up to that next level, whether it be pay or, uh, you know, more vacation, or, whatever it is. The more clarity you can provide, I think the more at ease you put your staff in really knowing what they need to do when they walk in the door in the morning. And as much as I think expectations can scare some if it's like maybe a little too crazy, and especially at first, because it is an awkward situation to go, if it's your first job or your 10th job, it's awkward to go into a new place. So you're probably battling those nerves at first, and you're trying to achieve these goals, and if they're unrealistic goals at first, then everything might fall apart. But if you can kind of stair step them to get them to a productive level, I think that's helpful, especially with the new technician. uh how do you feel about that piece of it, right? Like the clarity of expectations from a leadership side, and maybe any advice on how to do that.
Oh, well, I mean, you said a lot there, so we'll try and unpack it just a little bit.
Sorry.
It's all good. So a couple of things, that make me think about it. So people like to know what they're expected of, right? They don't roll out of bed in the morning and say, today I'm going to be mediocre, right? They might not actually make that statement of, today I'm going to just be a rock star, but they need to know what they're contributing, to the shop's success. So I think setting that tone very early is a wonderful thing to do. And if you can say to, especially, I had the opportunity working in Madison with a lot of, there's a partnership with a college there, and I had a lot of younger technicians coming to me. And between, the relationship that I had with them and with the college, it was demonstrating the career potential that we have in our industry, right? And I think that that's really pretty impressive when you think about, how you can grow your career and how you can advance, and the ability that going back to what I was saying, the sweat that you put into it, right? Whether that's getting your ASEs, your state certifications, whatever it might be, learning the job, obviously adding extra tools to your toolbox, whether physical or mental tools, whatever it might be, and how you can grow. I take a great deal of pride in the number of teammates that I had the opportunity to work with that started at a general service level that are now master technicians. And the more often that you talk about that potential, that ability to grow somebody's career and champion that, right now it's hard for people to find technicians, to find good technicians. And we all know that growing them is a great avenue, like bringing them in young and being able to do that. Well, there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of ways to do that. But one of the best ways is to, have an example, right? And being able to pull the lead tech that you helped, that you partnered with, that you guided, pull them aside, sit down, break bread, have some lunch with the new teammate, and say, this is the potential future for you, right? And this person is going to help guide you. I'm going to help guide you. We've got a written plan about what a career progression should look like. We've got tools that are going to support you. We're going to make an investment into you. and try and see how far we can grow together. And laying that out, so that that path exists is really a wonderful thing. It also, like, part of what you're talking about is feedback, and we're generally not the greatest at it in our industry. I think is a fair statement, good or bad, right? The bad is usually when the vein starts popping out of the front of the forehead. That's when the bad is going to come out. Like, I'm tired of the way that you breathe. It's too hot and too heavy, and right. But the good, being able to acknowledge that, hey, man, Mrs. Jones really appreciates the way that you got her oil change done so fast. Or for a service advisor, like, hey, that was a great way of saying thank you to that customer, and appreciating them coming to see us. Some of those simple things helps with career progression as well, because it's not here's your wrench, here's your bay, get to work, we'll see you, like pushing you into a dark corner and saying, figure it out yourself. But being able to partner with them and say, I'm here for you, because if I invest in you, right, you're going to grow. And that's something I thrive off
of. Technicians, have you checked out WrenchWay yet? It's a free online community for automotive and diesel professionals just like you. Whether you're job hunting or just looking to connect with other industry professionals, WrenchWay makes it easy to explore opportunities, stay updated on industry news, and help promote the technician profession. With WrenchWay, you can see detailed job info you care about before you apply or interview, stay in the loop with what's happening in the auto and diesel community, explore technician compensation in your area and across the U.S., track your certifications, and much more. Join the WrenchWay community for free at wrenchway.com or download the WrenchWay mobile app. Links are in the show notes. At some level, it's just a element of being a human being, right? And oftentimes I feel like our industry almost, not that they don't look at technicians as human beings, but at times they're maybe looking at the hours over the person, right? Like, and I think that's a common mistake I see in shop leadership, is only viewing that and maybe not truly trying to get to know your staff and not truly trying to have a personal connection. I know in our own family shop, that's something that I've worked on with our service managers to, we were struggling to do one-on-one meetings with our techs. And it was because it was always hair on fire. You don't have time to get to the one-on-one. And then all of a sudden these lapses in communication come up and there's frustration and all of this stuff. And I said, why don't you just take, we don't have a huge shop, like take one tech a week out to lunch and just do your one-on-one that way, so that you have a more formalized setting. You can actually have an agenda without the phone ringing a million times and you having to step away. And, at some level, I almost feel like even that part's disrespectful if you have to keep cutting away from that one-on-one meeting that you say is a priority, like doing it in a setting that's not within the walls of the shop, right? Where you can get away and get to know somebody at a little deeper and more personal level. I think it helps get an appreciation for both sides. I often talk about the technician side and not truly understanding what happens up front. Well, in a lot of cases, it's because they've never been exposed to what's going on up front. They've never sat behind that counter. And so I think any opportunity you can have to have that communication, but then also like proactively plan it, like, and actually make sure it happens, because it can quickly kind of go by the wayside when all of the other fires come up in your day.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And there's, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it. I'm sure every one of us in this industry is guilty of it, right? You're getting there first thing in the morning and there's a pile of drop-offs and the phone's already ringing and the tech walks in and you're standing there just holding the keys. Well, the human part of that is to say, it's going to be a busy day. I got you a cup of coffee and here's a donut for you, right? I appreciate you. Thanks for coming in. Let me know when you're ready to start racing, right? And that part of it. And the other part, if we are good with annual assessments, right? Like going through and doing like an annual sit down with the teammate. Well, if you don't have that regular feedback as part of your cadence with the team, that annual assessment almost becomes a surprise, right? So you're sitting down at the end of the year and it's like, hey, surprise, you did a great job, or hey, surprise, you suck at life. And shame on us as leaders if we're not giving them feedback, right? Like I said, they don't get out of bed first thing in the morning and say, today I'm just going to be marginal. Like if you're telling them like, hey, this is where I see you growing and this is what I see you're doing well, and how can I help you with this? This is an area you're struggling with on a regular basis. And I applaud you for making sure that your team are getting out and doing those one-on-ones. That annual review, whatever you want to call it, performance assessment, whatever, it's not a surprise anymore, and it's not a terrifying thing, and it's a recognition of a year of hard work and what you've put in to grow your career. And at that point, it's kind of fun because you can look back and say, you remember when you started and you didn't have any ASCs, and now we're 12 months into it, and look how far you've come. And it's a lot of high fives and happiness at that point. So yeah, I give you a lot of credit for making sure that your team are out doing those one-on-ones.
I also, what you said there really struck a chord with me in regard to that annual review and, not making it a surprise. I actually think it brings a really good story to mind of a technician and manager that I was talking to, and kind of heard both sides of this kind of communication dynamic. And the story was this technician was freaking out, thinking they were going to get fired. They were really stressed out, and they weren't thinking they were doing a good job. And the manager, on the other hand, thought they were doing a phenomenal job and were kicking butt and were doing great things, but they weren't having that regular conversation and that regular talk. And so, I think classically we think the opposite way, where maybe somebody thinks they're doing really good and the manager doesn't, and then it ends up not ending well. This was the opposite of that, where they weren't communicating enough that the person was doing an outstanding job, and therefore the tech was thinking they were doing a terrible job, and their confidence was kind of going down because there was no assurance. And I think a lot of times we as a human race look at millennials, or I put millennials in there, and I'm on an older millennial, right? But always talk about how they need, the constant pat on the back. And it's not even that, right? Like it's more just like, hey, if I'm doing a bad job, I want to know I'm doing a bad job. If I'm doing a good job, I want to know I'm doing a good job. And if you kind of leave it up to chance, it leaves the employee, the technician, to maybe let their mind wander and not actually know what the feeling is. So communication is always such an easy thing to talk about. It's so hard to do.
Oh, it is. And it's funny because there's so many pitfalls that are associated with it, right? I challenge you, if you get to the point where you can go to, we all have that very, very seasoned technician, and you get to that point where every week you're acknowledging something they're doing to help contribute to your shop success, right? Hey, thanks for getting that done. Thanks for coaching him. Just something, just be deliberate about it, once a week, and you try it, and then take a week off. And that seasoned technician will pull you aside at the end of the week and say, what did I do wrong? Right? Because even though they're not a millennial, you're getting them to the point where they understand your expectations. They understand what you're looking for, what defines success, right? And they're going to get to that point where they're going to be part of that team and part of that culture and part of that vision. And that minute that you stop that level of communication, and let's face it, right? As leaders, we all have bad days, right? But we are always on stage. So our bad days will dramatically influence the rest of the shop. You have a bad day where you're feeling down or anything like that, and you forget to say hi, you forget to acknowledge the hard work that somebody does that you do on a regular basis. It will have a ripple effect through the rest of the shop, and it can be really, really tragic. So you have to make sure you're setting that aside. You have to make sure that we're there to support, as leaders, we're there to support the people who are doing the hard work to take care of the customers. And so that level of communication needs to be consistent. It also, once it gets so consistent, it gets a lot of fun and easy, right? Because then you start, connecting with people on a different level. And it's not, you still have that separation as far as supervisor and employee and whatnot, but then you're connecting on a more of a supportive role, right? You're helping each other grow together. It's a symbiotic relationship at that point. And like I said, that tech will call you out. I can speak from firsthand experience. It felt really, really uncomfortable.
Well, it, if you're a leader in a shop and you're looking for ways to stand out from other leaders, you want to be kind of the best of the best. I think that communication side can be what changes your world, right? If you're good at communication, I think it sets such a good foundation and really drives the culture. It drives so many positive things. And if you don't have good communication, which I think a lot of service managers, especially that struggle with their teams, are not strong communicators and they don't do it intentionally. And I even look back at over the course of my career, I think that was one of the more unnatural, and not only unnatural, but like almost unspoken things where when you are a technician, you are so used to like, I've got to get this car out, I've got to get this truck out, I've got to do, whatever. And you're minute by minute, you're going like crazy. And to go from that to like, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation, it almost feels like you're not being productive, right? It almost feels like you're not putting something out that somebody's paying for, and therefore you almost feel guilty in your head. At least that was my experience of, I'm just sitting here having this conversation. And so like there's this internal conflict. And once you get past that and you know that what that conversation is doing is actually driving production, I think you're just in a much better place as a manager.
Yeah, well, and Simon Sinek talks about it. I'm sure you know who he is, right? What makes us good
Oh
at
yeah.
our job gets us promoted. But once we get promoted, usually what made us good at our job does not make us a good leader. It makes us experienced. It gives us that tribal knowledge, right? We know what the job's involved out in the shop. We know how that is, but that doesn't make us a leader. And so making that transition into being a leader, yeah, your communication skills have got to be on point. And certainly going, I it's an opportunity to say, hey, let's be humble, right? It's a really great way of approaching it. Is I want to be humble because I want to be your leader. I want to be here to help you grow your career. I'm going to work on my communication with you, and I hope that you'll be forthright with me. And that's been fun. Those conversations have been fun when you get to that point where you're doing, like you're talking about, the regular one-on-ones, and you're the one-on-ones become that, initially they're that conversation about the teammate, about the technician, or about the advisor, whatever it might be. Hey, this is what I see you struggling with. This is what but when you get to that point where the communication is more that two-way street, they can say, hey, you seem overwhelmed, boss, with XYZ. Is that something I can help you with? Right. And that communication skill, just it's so vital. And become a student of leadership, become a student of communication, and spend the time in it. Because you're right. You have that idea, like I've got to turn hours, right? That's where we come from. I got to turn hours, I got to deliver sales, I got to take care of customers. But as we transition to leaders, almost any industry, right? When we transition to leaders, you got to learn to lead. And it's not a for most people, it's not just a birthright, right? It's not just something that they just naturally have. It's something that it's a muscle that they have to practice, and they continue to get better with it. And they're going to fail, they're going to struggle, and they should make sure that they take time to learn from those failures.
100%, could not agree more. This week's episode of Beyond the Wrench is brought to us by Jasper Engines and Transmissions. Okay, your customer's engine or transmission has failed, but now is not the time for them to trade their vehicle. Not without a working engine or transmission. Besides, would they have kept their vehicle another 3 to 5 years if their engine or transmission had not let them down? If you answered yes, then Jasper Engines and Transmissions is your choice to give your customer's vehicle new life and many thousands of miles of enjoyable driving performance. When considering the high cost of a new or newer used vehicle, there's a pretty good case to be made for replacing a drivetrain component that has failed or is delivering poor performance. Rather than trading their car, truck, van, or SUV, Install a quality remanufactured Jasper product for less than your customer would have to invest in a new vehicle or a newer used vehicle. Check out their website at jasperengines.com to learn more about the money-saving value of Jasper. One thing I want to make culture a point of our topic of discussion here, in that you, and again, going back to what I led with, you've seen a lot of shops over the years. I'm sure your experience is similar to mine in that if you walk into a shop that doesn't have good culture, you can tell pretty quick. And if you walk into a shop that does have good culture, it is kind of the polar opposite, right? You can tell really quick. It's the opposite in how you feel, but you can, in both scenarios, you can get a sense as to how it sits fairly quickly, at least in my eyes. Is that something that you see as you visit shops, that you can see, hey, this company, this shop has a outstanding culture versus maybe one that doesn't?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I kind of call it like the flavor, right? Like you and you know, there's we're going to do an oil change the same in any shop, right? And there's shops across the nation, across the world, they're going to change the oil, and it's that process of the oil changes for the most part almost always the same, right? But it's what the shop does outside of that, you know, and it's like the unspoken, the unseen things that make that shop different. Whether it's something so simple as they vacuum the mats out, or you know, the technician brings the keys up and hands the keys to the customer if they're a waiter, or they park the vehicle outside. There's little things like that that are tied to the shop's identity. And if a shop has a good identity, usually they're culturally sound. And you're right, you're exactly right. You can walk in and feel it right away. You can do, you know, you walk in and if it's really dark, right, and the lights aren't quite working, and you can see that, you know, there's a mess, and as far as the magazines are piled up on the counter, and you look out in the shop and everything's in a disarray, that all starts from the leader. And so if, a lot of times that culture will exist if the leader has made an effort to make sure that the identity is spoken. It's kind of like setting a goal, right? The goals have a much higher likelihood of actually being successful if you write the goals down. So as a leader, right, when you go into a shop, if you write down, like, this is our identity, this is what we're going to be known for. We're going to be, you know, the best tire shop in town. We're going to be the highest technical, you know, capacity. We'll be doing all the diagnostics for all the other shops. We're going to be an ADAS shop, whatever it might be, right? We're going to be a training shop. We're going to be a shop where for our group of shops in this town, we're going to be the ones that they're going to want everybody to come and experience what our shop has got going on. And that's the leader starts that by starting to write that down. But then the leader also needs to get buy-in and communication from the other teammates in that shop to say, hey, what do you want to be known for? Right. And it's kind of a weird question when you think about it. Like, when you ask a technician, what do you want to be known for? Changing oil. No, come on. Like, really, what do you want to be known for? Right. Do you want to be like, we all have that technician where when we're working on something that we're going to call and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. And that technician didn't just trip over that skill, that success, whatever it might be. They put the efforts into it. Kind of goes back to what you're talking about as far as career path. What do you want to be known for? Well, I want to be a top tier technician. Cool. Then this is that path. Let's talk about that. And then also tying in the shop's culture, the shop's identity. And that's all that you can see it, but you don't really see it, and it's kind of unspoken. And you know, if you walk into a shop and everybody's high-fiving each other and laughing and goofing around, you know they got a good culture. You know that more than likely the leader has a huddle in the morning and they set the stage for the day. They got an idea. Maybe they plan a day a week or every day of the week. Who knows, that they're going to have lunch with each other and they're going to work on the relationship. Maybe they got, you know, an event each month. They go out, they do that stuff. But all that stuff bonds the team, and that helps solidify the culture.
Ooh, I love that bit that you just split out there. I'm interested to hear, again, I'm going to speak from my experience and just see if you have seen elements of this, but in a lot of shops, I see maybe that alpha technician with a bad attitude. And when I say that, probably a good technician, probably really good at their job, but maybe not the best cultural fit from the standpoint that, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. I was a rep for a company, and this particular shop had a tech who wouldn't let anybody play music in the shop, would never say hi to anybody, and would just get mad if you even tried to talk to him. And what it caused was a lot of turnover in this shop because nobody could work with him. And it was really, really difficult. And the hard part was, and I think a lot of shop leaders battle this, and that he was very productive. He was really good at his job, but he wasn't a good teammate and he didn't add to the culture. And I'm interested to hear if you've seen similar things or if I'm being overly dramatic here.
Well, you might be being overly dramatic. I'm not going to judge on that. But you do have that, right? You have that top tier technician, and they're a massive producer, but everybody walks around like on eggshells around them, right? They don't want anything to do with them. They can be a cancer for the entire location. Now, as far as addressing it, right? You're the leader who's in that shop, whether you are that leader or whatever it might be. The leader needs to spend some time figuring out, like, how long is too long, right? And can you influence this person to understand where the shop is going, what your visions are, and would that change it? Ultimately, I had a mentor of mine years and years and years ago that I fortunately still have the opportunity to connect with on a time to time basis, and we were talking about automotive shops, and he said to me, "Listen, we change out a lot of things for a lot of people. We don't do heart transplants though. So if that
Mm.
person's heart's never going to get into it, eventually you have to let them go." And it was hard, right? I think I was very, very young when I had that conversation, and that realization, like, I can't get through to this person, and they hate life for whatever reason, right? But I had people coming to my shop who wanted to work with me, who wanted to partner with me, who wanted to grow, and he was a roadblock. He was a speed bump where they would say, "Well, can I work but not near him? Can I have a different bay? Can I be away from him? Can I work on alternating schedules?" It's like, my gosh, I'm interested in growing people, growing my shop's identity, growing my culture, and I have to carry this dead weight around with me. I had to realize that you can't do it for everyone, and it might be that that person could be happier someplace else. Let's face it, our job is really stressful and really hard. It's physically demanding, it's emotionally demanding. If you hate life, that's just an added burden that you're putting on yourself and on the people around you. And eventually, you got to change something about that. So, what you're talking about, yeah, if you've gotten to that point where that technician, even though they're producing a ton for you, your shop should be focused on growth. Your shop should be focused on the future and on where you're going to go. The old phrase of, what got us here today won't get us there tomorrow. In most cases, maybe that technician's not the guy that you need.
That might have been some of the best advice I've ever heard. And I think with the visual of we don't do heart transplants, what amazing advice, because that is something that's so simple. It's a visual, and the message behind it is so powerful. I cannot tell you how much I love that. That is something I'm going to carry on with me forever.
I will make sure to give credit where credit's due.
So we've talked about shops and the personalities in shops. There are a lot of different personalities, and one of the things in our conversation even prior to this that I thought was really interesting was some of your take on how that impacts your ability to communicate properly with a customer, right? And being able to kind of do it in an organized fashion, not a stressed fashion to a customer in times when you've got three different phone lines ringing, and maybe a tech waiting at your door, and you're trying to take care of the customer. And from the shop standpoint, when you're in the office, that's a really stressful time. And then the customer shows up and you're still expected to put a smile on when you go up and talk to that customer. How challenging is that?
Or you're having that stressful day and that phone won't stop ringing, right?
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned it. I had mentioned that I was in a training earlier this week, and we did some exercises with some role plays, right? And calling, and we did a bunch of them. We were really trying to make sure that yes, a role play is uncomfortable, but you're learning by watching, right? And being able to step out of this. And the start of it was you're calling with, I need brakes and water pump. And it was funny, you know, we're doing these role plays, and well, I don't agree with this price. You were using the wrong part, and all this stuff that's the granular stuff that we get involved in day to day. And then one of the teammates said, you need your brakes. Okay, are you safe? And it was like this, like everything in the class came screeching to a halt. And it was so much fun. And you know, being able to step back from it. And everybody in the class started talking about, you know, being able to acknowledge that our customers are people too. And they're not calling us because they have nothing else to do, right? You're calling because I want to get a price on brakes. Well, inherently you're saying my car won't stop, right? And I'm worried about my family. I'm worried about, you know, getting to school, getting to work, whatever it might be. We always talk about it. You know, our cars are generally our second biggest investment in our life, and they're very, very important. And there's this really unique dynamic when you think about it in our industry, where we'll call and make an appointment, and we'll go into a shop and we'll hand a shop that we've never been at keys to our second biggest investment and instantly give over that trust, right? And so this exercise, we're going through and doing this, and they started talking about empathy, and they're like, well, we should be asking about the water pump. We should be, and so then the role plays got really kind of fun. Like the you know, hey, I'm going on vacation. Cool, where are you going? Sorry about the brakes. How can I help you? And it just kept rolling like that. But ultimately, like being able to take and recognize that the customers are human, right? And they're calling because their day went south. You know, previously working for a tire company, and I used to joke with people because a customer would call in, or we'd do a role play where a customer would call in, hey, can I get a price on a set of tires? And we do a wonderful job talking about features and benefits, and we do it even today. We talk about all the features and benefits and all the added reasons that they should be buying tires from us, and then we don't do anything with it, right? There's not a, hey, would you like to get that? Would you like to schedule that appointment? That closing statement, a closing line, whatever it might be. So then, you know, the follow up is, tell me about that customer's day, right? Do you really envision that they were sitting at home and like working on a TV dinner, and they're catching up on their show, and they just have this random thought pop into their head, like, I wonder what a set of tires costs. They're actually calling because they have bad tires. Somebody told them they got bad tires. They got a flat. They saw the cords. They're reaching out, and because our customers generally don't, and I'm not trying to disparage any customer with this, but they generally don't know our world, right? And so they're reaching out with this idea. They're controllable. The thing that they can associate is price. So they call and say, hey, what's the price on brakes? What's the price on a water pump? What's the price? Well, yeah, they might be price shopping, but what they're looking for is somebody to connect with them and give and earn that trust. So going back to the key tosser, right, where you walk in to this random shop with a whole bunch of noise and a whole bunch of tools, and you don't know what's going on, and to hand over the keys to your second biggest investment and say, I trust you to keep my family safe, right? Like that happens so fast. Like if you're at a regular retail store, you're not going to walk up to somebody and say, you know what, you look like a good person. Here's my keys, right? It's not going to happen, but we do it. Our customers do it day in and day out. So if we don't take a moment and acknowledge that our customers are people and that they need our empathy, they're calling because the you know what hit the fan, and maybe they're calling for an oil change. They're still calling for an oil change because the light's on, and we should be able to say, we're your guy. We want to be there for you. We want to be able to help you. Let's figure out a time that works great and get you taken care of, right? But they're not calling just without a reason. And we get that opportunity. It's kind of like you get to imagine having the superhero cape on, right? You get like we have that cool opportunity day in and day out to take care of people that their day went bad, right? And if we don't recognize that and inject that empathy, we're missing out on a lot of fun in our industry.
As you're talking about this, I can't help but think about uh, the human element behind all of our business, right? You talk about it being a person's second biggest investment, and them truly wanting to trust you and wanting to, put their family's lives in your hands essentially. We talked about the other side with the technicians and the human element there, and uh, the ones this is, I think, something that I've been fairly good at in my life. Could always do better, but I do truly care about other people, right? And I think there are a lot of people, a lot of the really successful people, especially in that customer facing position, are folks that they do care, and they actually do care where you're going to vacation, and they do care that your family stays safe, and that they like you, that they like coming to your shop. And I think it's such an underrated part of everything we do, as an industry. Uh, it is sometimes not their favorite thing, a customer's favorite thing, to bring their vehicle to your shop and leave their incredibly hectic day to do so. And for me, I just never understood why you wouldn't want to be curious, or you wouldn't want to know about somebody, because that makes life a little bit more fun. It makes your day to day a little bit more fun, and it helps you build relationships with people. I'm sure you're very similar to me in that some of my best friends in this world were either customers or vendors, or, whatever it was, that came to me through business. And that's my favorite thing about business is the people you meet, the fun times you have. And it- you go through their pains with them, you go through life with them. And if if you're not having fun with it, and you're just there for the paycheck, that makes your days long, right? Like that to me, that's just not fun. And I know there are people that it is straight to business, and that's perfectly fine. There are different types of people, different types of personalities, all sorts of different personalities that have been successful in this business, and there's a fit for everybody at some level. I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to have a little fun with it and get to
Right.
know people.
Yeah, and I mean makes the job easier, right? It if it was that same training class, it was there was a newer manager, and he's we're working through the role plays, and well, the day's busy, and I don't know how to get him in, and I'm trying to help him out. I'm like, okay, cool. What if it was your mom? Oh man, why would you ask me that question, right? Like, yeah, I'd figure out. I'm like, so treat your customers like their friends, like their neighbors, like their family, and they're there because they can't do it themselves. They're there because they're too busy. Maybe they don't have the skills. Maybe they don't have the tools, but they're reaching out to you. And there's something about that connection, right? They're reaching out and giving over their trust and saying, I want you to help me. Giving back a little bit of the humanity to that is an easy like equation, like being able to say, hey, let me help you out. I want to be your guy. Let's talk about what you got going on this weekend. And it makes it so much easier at that point. And then it's not a transaction. And what you're talking about, right? That's how you build those lifelong relationships with your customers. And then the key tossers get easier, right? They barely step their foot in the front door, and they're throwing the keys at you and saying, just call me when it's done. And you're saying, no, come back. I want to know who won the game last night, right? And it's great at that point, because then the job gets easier, it gets more fun, and you really need to take the time just to recognize how rewarding our career can be.
We talked about, I think, both of our transitions from working in a shop to like working in the office. And one of the best bits of advice that I had gotten early in my career was, I had just started off my first job in a customer facing role where I'm on the phone a lot, and I was super stressed out and trying to be the professional, right? I was trying to kind of live by the book and almost like a robot. And one of my very first managers, who's still a really dear friend of mine to this day, had kind of heard me on the phone, and uh, we went out for a happy hour one night. And I'm joking around. We're having a great time. Like everybody's having a blast. And she pulled me aside the next morning and it was like, that guy that was at the party last night, be that guy. Don't be this guy like that you're at work. And it was life changing advice for me, right? Because it was the first time in my life where I felt like I could be myself at work. And when that switch flipped for me, that was probably the single most impactful day of my life because that kind of gave me the confidence that, you know what, I can be myself and I can have fun at work and I can let my personality kind of shine. Whereas before that, I was so used to like, I like robotic. I need to do this. I need to do this. And I'm forever grateful because of that advice. That really, really had a huge impact on my life.
I've had similar, right, and similar experience. But so going back to something you asked me about earlier, I'm going to ask you a question. So when that changed, how did the culture of the shop change? How did the shop's identity change for you?
One, I know I had a heck of a lot more fun and there was a lot more joking around between me and my coworkers, right? There was a lot more I was just looser on the phone. Like I didn't mind just sitting back and having a conversation with somebody. And I think it, to me it made work bearable, right? Like I think before that it was miserable and I was not having fun and I was super stressed out and I was like that tech I referred to earlier that I didn't think I was doing a very good job and I probably wasn't doing a very good job. And so when I was able to have fun, that made the day-to-day life just so much better. And it allowed me to play into my strengths, which I think is so key for anybody. And regardless of what your strength is, understanding what your strengths are and understanding what your weaknesses are is just such a huge element. And as obvious as this sounds, I don't think it really occurred to me until my late 20s that everybody's got different personalities and everybody's got different strengths, everybody's got different weaknesses. It's okay to have weaknesses. You're not going to be strong in every single thing. And to the point to where even with our own internal WrenchWay staff that I've talked about, I openly talk about like, hey, I am terrible at this one specific thing and you're great at it. Maybe you can help me out. And I am perfectly fine with it now. If you would have told me that when I was 22 years old, I would have been shattered. Right. And I just think that is to me, that's what changed.
So when that change happened, right, and you started having a little bit more fun at work, did productivity drop?
No, it went way up. My
Way
confidence
up,
went
right?
way up. Everything went better.
Yeah. Like you don't have to be that robotic thing. Going back to what we were talking about as far as making the transition from technician to into a writer or into a leadership role, right? You try and my tie is going to be really, really straight, right? I'm going to make sure that I say the right things and I'm on. Well, come on, you're still human, right? Be okay with making mistakes. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It actually makes when you get to that point, it makes things so much easier, and the stress becomes a little bit easier. But your productivity will increase. Your technician's productivity will increase. Your sales will increase. Customers don't want to deal with a robot, and employees don't want to work for a robot.
Oh, I think if we could just cut out that last 5 minutes of conversation there, that is solid gold for anybody, specifically those that are going from a technician role into an office, right? Like I think that is where I see it most commonly. And maybe it's because that's what I went through in my life. And I can identify like, hey, I've been there before. I know exactly what you're going through. But I've seen that with other technicians, right? They go up, they're very tense and they're like are a little shaky with what they're doing and you're like just relax. I know it's really easy to say, really hard to do, but if you can be yourself and kind of just, have fun. I know a lot of that's probably not what a lot of employers will say to their people. They want everybody to be productive, but at some level you have to have fun. Otherwise you're just and fun might be different for different people, right? Fun for some people is diving into a spreadsheet and they have a blast with it. That's probably not my definition of fun.
True.
But identifying where your strengths are and making sure that like even if you're evaluating whether you want to take a position or not, like that can help lead you in the right direction. Do I actually like doing this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you think about it, right? When if you're in that technician mindset, or you're the leader who chose to move the technician into that, leadership role, that's kind of like what the customers are doing, right? They're giving their keys over, they're giving the trust. And so in that conversation, when we talked about setting people up for success, when we talked about career pathing, when you're moving from that technician role to, that service advisor role, or to that manager role, there's a level of trust there as well, right? I'm trusting that you're going to step into this role, and I'm going to give you over trust, and I'm going to help you, and I'm going to guide you, and I expect you to make mistakes, right? I expect it, because I did. I went through similar things. I made the mistakes, and so let's work on this together, right? And there's that, like, you talk about it, right? You hire somebody, and it's like, oh, they're not going to work out. Well, what changed? You saw something in that person which was enough that you wanted to hire them, right? What changed? When you move them as an effective, productive technician into a service advisor role, it's not that that their heart gave out, right? It's that they need that guidance. They need that partnership. They need somebody who can show them the way. The same as when they started out as a general service and advance their career. So partnering with them and giving over that trust and saying, let's find a way together, right? Can be a lot of fun as well. It all goes back to being human and just recognizing that.
As we wrap up this podcast, that will be a major compliment that I'm going to give you in terms of your leadership style. I think you're always looking to grow. You're always looking to get better. And your approachability, I think, is such a key factor in your success, right? I think you're the type of person where I think from the first time I met you to, like, I felt like I could have a conversation with you, a long conversation with you right off the bat. And I think there's something to that. And I think it's a very special and unique talent that you have. And I think it's probably just ingrained in your personality and who you are, but you are a very approachable person. I think I can tell from talking to you, you have a good heart, and you do want to see other people do well. And I think that's where the best leaders shine through. You have all of those traits, all of those qualities. And the fact that you spent some time here with us today, diving into a lot of that, means the world. It's been just an amazing conversation.
It's been a lot of fun. It's been a great opportunity. I've enjoyed our conversations. I think we both get a lot of credit for not going too far down the rabbit hole, because even though you tried to claim it, we both do it.
You might have helped me there and keep me between the rails here. So I do appreciate that. I appreciate everything you're doing for not only GreatWater 360, but the industry as a whole. Many kudos to you, and hope to have you back on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you much, sir.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting WrenchWay.com.